I want to thank everybody tonight. My name is Malcolm Green. I'm president of the Harborage Condo Association in SIRS. So, just across the river here. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I also want to thank Troy for helping us get everybody together, wrangle up the senators, and get them all together to do this. I also want to let everybody know that this year, in August, there's a election going on for the city steward. And if you guys can find it in your heart to re-elect Troy. So they gave me this big script for reading, and it's supposed to come to happen. So after talking with the senators, we're going to modify that a little bit. So right now, I want to introduce Gail, who's our state representative.
Senator.
State senator.
First of all, I want to say thank you for hosting us, and thank you all for your concern and your interest in this very important legislation. As you know, the state of Florida is made up of lots and lots of condos, and you all are parts of various condo associations. And given the Surfside event, really brought to the forefront a lot of the issues that perhaps have been ignored over the years. And the legislature came together and addressed it in several different ways. We had legislation in the last 2 years, and actually 2.5 years, and have made some significant changes. And I know you're feeling some of that repercussion and the requirements that are here. So when we were called, my office was called, I looked to the experts. This is not my area of expertise. I kind of stay in my lane of healthcare. I'm chair of the Health and Human Services Appropriations Committee in the Flagler Center. So I look to experts and to really help us delve into the issue and get the answers that you are all seeking. So I am so delighted that my wonderful colleagues, and this is a bipartisan endeavor, because we are all working together in the state of Florida to address these very, very significant issues. So today we have with us Jennifer Bradley, Senator Bradley, thank you. And she is from Northeast Florida, represents District 6 up in the just south of Jacksonville. And she has no commerce, essentially, in her district, but she is the major author, along with Senator Pizzo, right next door. There he is. He represents Miami-Dade and Broward County. And Jason, how many condos do you have?
67% of the 565,000 constituents live in condos.
And yes, so he has a major condo population in his district and is the only senator who actually lives in a condo. So he brings a very specific perspective. And we have a Republican and a Democrat who partnered together to write this legislation and working very hard. And then we have Travis Moore, who has joined us, and he is a lobbyist who represents a lot of condo associations and works very closely across the state with many, many condo associations. So I brought the A team. When I was asked to do this, I said, I don't like I need the A team. So I have brought you the A team. And what I'm going to do is ask them each to do a couple of minutes, to give you kind of an outline. We prepared handouts for you. No school teacher in me comes out, I'm going to have a handout, going to take something home to study, but there won't be a test tomorrow. And what I need you to do is to, as we get into this discussion, and there are questions, and I know we paper about the questions, and I know there are really pre-formatted questions. We want to answer as much as we possibly can, but we will work with you, and as we need to make changes, you have 3 sitting senators here who are here to work with you to solve the problems that we have dealing with major issues in the state of Florida. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jennifer and let her say a few words, and Jason, and then we'll be Travis.
Thank you so much, Senator Harrell, and thank everybody for being here. and thank you, Senator Pizzo and Travis. We really do, this group has really worked very closely over the last several years on condo legislation. I was the chair of, as Senator Harrell said, I don't have a lot of condos in my district. I represent a lot of rural North Florida. But I chair the Community Affairs Committee of the Florida Senate when SIRS collapsed. And the jurisdiction of that committee is the Florida Building Group. And so after the SIRS collapse, you saw a lot of groups mobilize and provide feedback to the legislature very quickly before that next session on some safeguards and some steps the state should take to make sure that we never see another tragedy like that again. And following that session, which is the Senate Bill 4D, and the D is because it was a special session, we passed the bill that required the two key components of the legislation, and that is the milestone inspection and requiring that associations have healthy reserves. The following year, we passed Senate Bill 154, and that really included a lot of clarity, details, and really fleshed out a lot of the questions that arose out of 4D. And after we passed 4D, Senator Pizzo and I did a lot of town halls in South Florida, around the state, and we got a lot of feedback. And that's why it's so important for everybody to be here tonight, because a lot of the feedback and the questions that we saw were the same through different. We knew that we had to have them addressed. We knew that their associations were trying to comply, but were finding a provision vague, or they thought it needed some more detail. And so that was included in Senate Bill 154. And then over the last year, we did more town halls and talked to more folks. And this year, the bill that we passed this year was House Bill 1021. And that bill really focuses less so on the milestones and the reserve study, and a lot more on accountability of associations. And really giving association the tools to root out bad actors, corruption, access to records, making sure boards have education requirements. Obviously, there is a lot to do and understand, and a lot of responsibilities and duties as a board member as well as a resident. But we needed to make sure that associations were equipped to do the important jobs that they do. So those were the three bills that were passed. Again, more town halls, more feedback. I would expect another bill next year to address additional issues as we go forward that we see associations facing. I can tell you that our goal is to make sure that everybody has a safe structure, a safe home, and that they're financially healthy, so that when there are issues, the money is there to be able to repair them and so that people stay safe. And that was our goal, and we're going to continue to get feedback and continue to have a process in Florida, which now other states are looking to and adopting our framework. And so we'll continue, this will continue to evolve, but I appreciate you being here. I look forward to your feedback.
Hi, everybody. I'll be the bad guy tonight. Here's the reason. I filed principally the bill that passed this year over 5 years ago. I did it following being a homicide prosecutor in Miami-Dade County. If one thing I went after were bullies of any kind, whether they're committing fraud or taking people's lives and compromising their safety. We had a Miami-Dade grand jury report of gross fraudulent, unethical violations occurring in condo associations. Everything that ranged from ignorance all the way to nefarious and pretty sophisticated situations. And in an effort to try to curb some of that activity, to put more weight and more responsibility on the association for the condo. And again, I'm from Miami, so I live in a city called Sunny Isles Beach. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but it looks like Dubai. I have condos in my district on my street where you park your car and it takes you and your car up to your unit. Yeah, okay, we have anywhere from 20, 30, 40, 50, we have some 70, $80 million units. Now you can imagine your collective association fees for those condos. The reason why I mentioned that is you can imagine the amount of fraud that goes on, even if you just scrape it a little bit every once in a while. And it was random. So what I proposed to do was lower the threshold as it relates to reporting requirements. It was 150 units or more, okay? And I pushed to file a bill because I thought we should go down to 25. I thought we should have transparency. You can see your credit card bill on your phone. You can see your phone bill on your phone. You can look at any and all these things. I think that your greatest asset, you should be able to monitor that as well. And there should be transparency of records and documents. A lot of management companies and associations didn't think so. The reason being, a lot of associations were run like middle school student government associations. They artificially suppressed their association fees to get reelected. They cut services behind the scenes. They didn't know what was going on. All of us, myself included, as I mentioned, I'm the only one who lives in a condo, enjoyed the benefit of having multi-families in the same building, bigger pool than I would have in a single-family house, nicer amenities. I would have a valet in a house, right? It's fantastic. But it does come with a burden once in a while. And what associations did for too long was kick the can down the road and defer maintenance for so long. We're going to get into it tonight. I know there's a number of questions. You guys have a number of concerns. It's going to seem like a bloody nose, no slow hurry up to where we are. But I will tell you, 5 years ago when I filed this bill, interest rates are a third of what they are now. Building materials and supplies for replacement were 45% less than they are today. And I represented a city called Surfside. And I was a homicide prosecutor. I've seen the worst of the worst. And what I would not do as a continuing member of this legislature to stand by while the can continued to get kicked down the road, as I had to stand for 18 hours a day watching bodies be peeled off the set. I won't do it. It's not going to happen again, and not on our watch. So it may seem like tough love, and I know there's going to be some vendors who are going to try to gouge and take advantage of you, but that's what your public servants are for. We are here to put them in their place, to make any glitches and changes and corrections that have to be made. We will not do so when your safety is at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators, and thank you for being here. As Senator Harrell said, my name is Travis Moore, and I represent Community Associations Institute, so those that serve and work and volunteer as board members and just unit owners, and those that work in the community association, condos, co-ops, HOAs, timeshares in that space. Real quick, it's the last one here to kind of paint the scene before we get into some specifics. And you are a very, very vital and important part of the process to be able to get feedback, because as you've heard, what was passed obviously is nothing. I don't think really what's passed is absolutely perfect. And that's why the legislature goes back every year and continue to tweak and get things right based on the feedback that we get from those having to deal with it. When you have the third worst building disaster in the history of the United States, 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing, and then the tragedy at Surfside, and those other two were caused by outside forces. The Surfside building was just 98 people died in the middle of the night at 1 a.m. in their beds. You cannot have that kind of disaster and not expect there to be some sort of response. We would want there to be a response to that. So your policymakers, those here responded and said, we're going to make some changes. Here's the why that the changes needed to be made. We had always had an association world and condo world, we had mandatory reserves, and we had reserves that were absolutely required. But then we were also one of the states that had the easiest, we were the lowest, easiest threshold to just waive them. So basically what would happen, and I've gone back and I've read the minutes of the meetings at Surfside through the years, and it's tragic when you know the end of the story. They would say, look, we want to keep our monthly expenses really, really, really low. We love the fact that we're paying the same low amount every month, every year. If you need something, when you need something, just special assess us, let us know when you need it, and then we'll pay. So for years, things would go by. And another type of a building where you don't have 100 and some owners, if you had one owner in an apartment building, a university dorm, a office park building, a hotel, those maintenance items would have been done. If you did in a Marriott, they would have done it. You would have paid $379 to stay on the beach, and instead of the $279 you had the year before maybe, and the maintenance and the things would have been done. But what happened here was, they decided, you know what? We now have $8 million worth of repairs in this building. Our residents said they wanted to keep the monthly payments low, so now it's time for us to tell them, okay, it's time. and they said, we're passing a special assessment. And those people went nuts, as probably we all were. We're all humans, and they said, wait a minute, well, because kind of generally, the kind of the dirty little secret in condos is you kind of want to hold on to the unit in between the special assessment. So when you hear whispers on the pickleball court, like, oh my God, there's going to be a special assessment, that's when you run to call your realtor, put it on the market, and get out. So you want to be in, right after a special assessment's been passed, you want to live there, you pay your monthly things, you don't have to worry about the future, and then you get out. Well, when they were told, you have $8 million, they said, absolutely not, and they recalled that board. They said, this is crazy, we're not paying, and the board said, but you said that you would pay when it's time to pay. No, we're not doing it. We called that board. The new board got in, fighting. Finally, they at this point, it was now $15 million worth of repairs. They said, we have to do it. The building is in really bad shape. They finally were able to pass that assessment, get a loan, part of it was with an assessment, and then got the plans, got ready, and then we all know, what happened with the tragedy, that it was too late, they couldn't do the repairs. So part of what the Senate philosophy was, as we went into this, was we need to make sure that buildings are inspected. Threshold buildings, as you know, once they're being built, as they're being built, there's the building department's coming in all the time, inspecting everything, saying, okay, drywall, that looks good, electric, you're good, but after a building is built, unless you're going to be needing permits to do some work, some construction work, nobody's going into that building and taking a look around, seeing what's going on. So the Senate said, you know what, we're going to do a milestone inspection program so that when your building gets 30 years and then every 10 years thereafter, we're going to at least go in and take a look. Non-invasive, just a visual inspection. If you have engineering companies telling you that they have to do a milestone inspection that involves destructive testing initially, that is absolutely not correct. If you have engineering companies telling you once you do a phase 1, you're guaranteed, you are locked in, that you have to use us for a phase 2 if you need it, and then you have to do it, you have to use us for any repairs. Well, the legislature in their wisdom said, well, we are not going to say, you're the guy doing the repairs, because then every single one is going to say you need repairs, if that's the case. So that was the thought, do that milestone inspection. The House, on the other hand, said, as Senator Pizzo said, this is not just about the building being inspected, this is also about, as we've said, maintaining this building. So we need to be dealing with the reserves and making sure that they cannot continue to just not do the reserves. So we had always had 4 categories that we had to do, and then the legislature said, what we're going to do is we're going to increase those based on recommendations by building experts, engineers, architects, contractors that know these buildings, know how they respond to the environment we have here in Florida. They said, here's the other items that we need. But you do not, even they're on the list, you do not have to reserve for anything association that you're not responsible for maintaining. So like windows and doors. It may be on the list, and so now everybody's saying, oh my God, the list went from 4 to 8, what are we going to do? But one of those items, windows and doors, most documents say that's the responsibility of the unit owner. So on things where the association never has to do and maintain reserves on something that is not their responsibility to maintain. The other thing was, if you can't determine if the remaining useful life is indeterminate or going to be more than 25 years, things like your columns, your load-bearing walls, at no point are you going to see a reserve schedule that says, all right, every 7 years, we're going to paint building 8, and we're going to replace all the columns in the parking garage in building 2. That doesn't happen. You do not have to be putting money away to replace those types of items. All you have to do is have money, you're going to have to maintain them. On occasion, you may have to do concrete work, etc. So there's a lot of information out there that I think we're going to be able to discuss tonight. But I think, in closing, the important thing to remember is that we had a situation that was really almost uniquely conduct, where you have 100 and some owners. I'm president of my association. I couldn't get agreement tonight that today's Thursday. If I went home and called a meeting, that's just the way condo world seems to be. So we have to take the responsibility and say, yes, and those that have been reserving and not just waiving, there's pain, but it's not nearly as much as those that for years and years and years, I would go to meeting after meeting, and the very first thing they would do at every condo meeting every year was, it's our time to waive reserves. That's just what they call it. In the agenda, we waive reserves. And that's what we, going into the future, want to make sure that we don't do, that we maintain these numbers. And thank you again for me.
So next person up will be Michael Kahn. Michael Kahn is shepherded this research study with ourselves, and we just want to show members here exactly what our issues are.
It's finally warm in Florida this year. It got unusually cold. And for a little bit of poop glove here, but not for the reason you may think. You have to wear long pants. So I've been wearing shorts for months. I don't have to wear long pants. So. Anyway, what I'm going to do is, and no disrespect to the senators or people in the audience, but I'm going to try to give from a Harborage perspective what we've been through and what we're going through with the SIRS study. The first chart I'm going to show is not for the senator, but for maybe the audience. So basically, there's two portions of it, in my opinion. And these are just my opinions, excerpts from the bill. There's a milestone inspection that's required for all buildings over 30 years old. If you're on near the waterfront, it's 25 years old. And it's required to be done every 10 years.
Like, intermittently, we may just chime in, we've had 2 bills since 4D that passed.
Okay, so we don't have them, so if you have them, I'd like to get them after the meeting.
Here's Monty's meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So the postal geographic location is. Yeah.
So the coastal thing, it matters, but it really doesn't matter, at least what I'm going to go through.
Sure.
It's, what I'm going through is just a quick review. The second portion is the reserve portion, where we have to put money away, mandatory money away, and collect it the next fiscal year. That's the issue that any building that's built as a condo has to do that structural reserve study now, and it's due at the end of this year. And then it's got to be done every 10 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of that stuff. And that reserve inspection for buildings under 30 years old is a visual. You don't put any constructive testing, they walk around when they look, and they put estimates down on what they think it should be.
They put cost estimates down?
What's that?
You said they put estimates down.
So I'll show you in my presentation some of the actual engineering estimates that came back for that. And for everyone's benefit, right, as a condo board member, you're not paid. It's a volunteer position. Unlike a board of directors of a company, you get no money for doing this. So now you're putting risk onto board members if they take a position by making it mandatory to collect that money the next fiscal year for them. Out of Florida, this came from the state records. There's 1,529 condominiums in Florida. Of those, about 900,000 are over 30 years old, just for reference. So, Harborage, you can see us right across the river. We're 18 years old, we have 130 units and 9 buildings. When we went to do a reserve study, we got 5 engineering firms to propose to do the reserve study. Again, it was only going to be a visual, it's not a milestone inspection, just a visual. We got prices average $276 a condo to $1,100 a condo to do the reserve study. That's what's been processed. So at Harborage, go ahead.
So you're saying of 130 units that they were going to charge you just to do the reserve study? It's going to, let's just say it was going to be
35,000 to 145,000.
yeah.
The low was 237 per condo, the high was 1,100.
Okay, and then one other question, Mike, and this is very helpful. Have you been reserving, or has Flagler been reserving historical?
Yes,
Okay,
very, very risky.
okay, thank you.
That's one of the problem with Harborage, is the reserves are very high, and the fees are very high for Harborage. So what I tried to do is put down some ideas. I didn't want to just say, these are the problems you see with the bill, but some ideas on how we can undermine it. I've done contracts in my career. One of the big things in legal agreements or agreements is you define terms up front, especially basic terms. What the hell does that mean? So everybody has a meeting in their minds and understands what they're talking about, and everybody's crystal clear what those things mean. So these are the key terms in the bill. Most people would agree on roof fix, but when we start looking at these other things, the engineering companies have different definitions compared to what condo owners think, compared to what architectural engineering firms say. But so that's one of the problems in the bill, is they're not defined as key terms. We'll get to it when I get to the actual recommendations or examples, but
Let me just jump in real quickly. Floor and foundation were removed from the bill in Senate Bill 154. And the items that remain were originally in the bill, and then the Florida Building Commission, the Florida Legislature in Senate Bill 4D, tasked the Florida Building Commission to look at the items that were in the SIRS, and give us feedback on whether or not they, in their opinion, because they're the experts, we defer to them, are these the items that we should be reserving for? They came back with their report and said yes. Floor and foundation, to your point, created some confusion, mostly because of their longevity. A foundation, how could you possibly replace a foundation? You'd have to raise the building. And so those terms were removed, and the addition of the terms replacement or deferred maintenance. So you may not replace your foundation, but if you have a crack in your foundation through the study, then you're going to need to make sure that money is available to prevent those in the future, to make sure that you are equipped to keep the foundation safe. So those two items are removed. The items that are on this list were approved by the Florida Building Commission. And then subsequently, we passed the legislation, and then DBPR will go through the rulemaking process, and they will continue to work through some items, with regard, for instance, pooling of reserves. Can you pool the reserves? What can you pool? What can be put together? DBPR will then come behind this legislation, and has already begun that, to do rulemaking. So that will fill in some more of the gaps, as well as future legislative tweaks. But so there.
thank you for that. Let me say one thing. Thank you for that. These terms came from the engineering firm we got from the structural study. And then the other thing, accountable board members, nobody presented changes.
Mike, let me go south for 1 second.
Yeah.
How many of you live in Harborage? Okay. So this is one of the great free services of your public servant who doesn't really think anything either. We want to see all the proposals, all the invoices, all the scope of work and everything like that, and be able to circulate it with us. And if you guys are getting gouged, you're getting screwed. I miss being a prosecutor. I love going there.
You have 1,500 condos. We'll pick that, but who's the escalation point if we don't have agreement with the engineering firm? There is no.
Yeah, so like, let me be very clear. I've had engineers' licenses revoked, I've had doctors' medical licenses revoked, and I said, used to send people to prison. This is what I do. If somebody is taking a very loose and fraudulent interpretation of what we drafted in good faith and taking advantage of these good people, I will remove their engineering license and never work again.
And that's great, but I guess, are you able to respond to 1,500 condos?
Yes, I do. Like, responds probably 35 to 55, my office, 55 different condo association issues every single day. 7 days a week, that's what we do.
Okay, that's good.
Wait, but Mike, also real quick. Also, in 2 things. In this year's legislation that Senator Harrell and Brown has passed, they put in close to $8 million for DBPR to hire 65 more people to do this, because they gave the jurisdiction They expanded the jurisdiction of DBPR and said, you will, if there is a discrepancy, you say, look, I don't think my engineering report is correct, that there are now folks, investigators dedicated to this, because you are right, there's way too many. The other thing is, just real quick, I just pulled up 154, and I'm not sure why it also kind of is indicative of the fact that I don't think your engineering company is helping you, but I don't know why they did not look at the latest legislation, but in the latest legislation, to Senator Bradley's point, where it goes into like structure, it literally says to the definitions, and primary structural systems as those terms are defined in chapter 627.706, which is the same structural, which is what is the insurance statute that is very, granular and very specific. So
are these definitions any place in the bills that were updated?
well, some of them aren't even there anymore, and then the other ones say what statute number, they refer you to what statute number the definition is in.
Okay. That's helpful. As a board member, volunteer board member, I don't know how you get updates. Because when I go out, I went out to the Senate review and an explanation of what the bill was. And this is where we must have segregation.
Well, and another thing that you might love, but also part of the legislation this year was education for board members. Because board members, as you said, they're volunteers. We've given them great responsibility. They are overseeing multi-million-dollar corporations in some cases as boards, but they do not. There was a loophole essentially that allowed them to not be educated, and the legislature for the last 2 years have been working on this, and it finally passed to say you will have to take 4 hours of education as a board member, and then every year when a new bill passes, like we talked about here, you have to do an hour of continuing education to say, hey, by the way, 4D has now changed and here's the law.
So why would anybody want to be a board member?
Well, exactly.
I mean, I have a full-time job and I'm on the board.
Right, because there seems to be an inherent interest in wanting to protect your greatest asset and having it just pay.
I totally agree.
Yeah, that's why someone would want to be important.
And it's very clear on these definitions, you're saying, you can have a 4 or 5 level, you can find out what they mean. But as a board member, you should be able to say, well, what does that mean? That's being your.
I just, first question that, who manages your association?
A manager.
We have a management company.
Your management company has licensed community association managers who are licensed by the state of Florida on these issues. I'm an attorney, okay? Every 3 years, I have to do continuing legal education credits in all different categories to stay up front and stay current, even though I'm the one that's actually making the law that I'm not studying. But your licensed community association managers get all of this stuff. I don't care if they're a single shop or their first service with 22,000 employees. This is a requirement of the licensure. And if they're not informing their residents and more directly their association on what's changed,
This planning board is freaking playing.
that's not good. I'll give you an example. There are 411 municipalities in Florida, 67 counties, 66 of which have a sheriff's office, and 306 municipalities that have police departments. I have 20 cities that I represent. Each and every single session, at the end, whatever passes, I speak to all of my police departments to tell them what's changed in criminal law. What protected, search and seizure, everything. I go through all of that. With my condo laws, everything that's changed in condo law. Your licensed community association manager, who's probably making a pretty good living, should be informing and up to date on what changes. And with all due respect, 2 sessions, 2 years have passed since the bill that's referenced in the slideshow. A lot has changed. A lot continues to change. It's fluid. And I would invite all of you guys, if you fail at the property management aspect of it, reach out to us.
And a lot of associations have been doing traditional reserve studies. The associations, the idea of a reserve study is not something new to the world of condo, right? So associations that do them more frequently have fewer special assessments. They preserve the financial health of the association. And everything that's on here is already considered in a traditional reserve study when they come into the cooperative. What the legislature did was say, look, the traditional reserve study isn't getting us where we need to go. We need to do a special reserve study of a structural integrity reserve study to make sure that we have financial health with regard to structural issues. So we basically created a special type of reserve study that will be done every 10 years. And we itemized that ultimately, there's 10 here, but there's 8 for 8 items. So go get a reserve study every 10 years for those 8 items. And you can't wait for those. And as Travis mentioned, not being able to waive, the legislature has always been the law that you can't waive, that you must reserve. We just always have the ability to just waive them with a majority of quorum. That could be 3 people, 4 people being able to waive for an entire association as the quorum gets lower and lower to make sure that you can actually have a meeting. It was, the people were in the dark. The other residents were having the association waived, that the building wasn't inspected. Half of them thought, I would never have waived if I knew that the roof was in that condition, that our electrical system was in that condition. There has to be some transparency to the process. Get an inspection in. Let folks know the condition of their building. What does the roof look like? What does the plumbing look like? Has the outside been waterproofed? Has it been sealed? Once people have the information, then you have the reserve study that comes in. They make sure that there's financial health, and it's a transition. I get that there are questions. Genuinely, that is why we're here, why we keep going through to our associations. There is going to be a learning curve. You don't just pass this and snap your fingers, and every association through the state knows exactly how to navigate it. And it's not just you that are trying to come on board with the new process. There are engineers, there are reserve folks, and they may not all be doing it right either. And we need to make sure that they're held accountable and not gouging. They're not charging you a replacement cost for something that doesn't need to be replaced. Maybe you don't need to take out maybe you just need to have them live. We are going to have to, as Senator said, it is fluid.
So let me get through a couple more slides and get to the real thing. But at least a request from Harborage is, having done lots of legal agreements, it would be nice if they could define the terms so everybody's speaking the same language. The other piece is in the SIRS bill is painting, exposed concrete hallways and things like that. That's not a building code item. So who's going to enforce that? Why is that in there? That type of thing. I looked at the state building, it's not painted. So which items have to be painted, which ones don't?
Yeah, what's in the law now is it's waterproofing and exterior painting.
Okay, I understand, but it's not a building code item. If you want to go get a building approved, you don't have to have your building painted.
I don't disagree with you. I never mind that. Is all getting this from the beginning. I never like fix it, unless they're saying it lasts to wear painting because it's a particular waterproofing feature. But cosmetically, I'm painting. I don't disagree with you. I've never liked it.
So the other piece I mentioned already, there's no appeal authority. If we can't get an agreement with the engineering company, there is no one we can go to appeals with other than take it to a lawyer and sue them. Or change another engineering company, you may get the same answer.
You can go, you can go to UPR, and before, I will admit, that was a kind of woefully inadequate, like they weren't going to be very helpful because they didn't have manpower for the ability to do it. Or the jurisdiction. They now have the jurisdiction. They've been given, as of July 1, they will have the budget signed, they will have the money and the people to do it.
How does the UPR enforce that if it's not a building?
So they,
you're,
as far as
because the Department of Business and Professional Regulation in Tallahassee regulates the licensure of everyone from your manicurist to the engineer who's working on your project. They can pull their license. They can suspend their license. So the act, not only do they have the affirmative authority over condominiums, I don't think they should be such an agency, but not only do they have that, they also have the licensure authorities. In North Miami Beach, right, close to Surfside, the week after the Surfside collapse, we had 360 units and there was depression towers, everybody had to evacuate. Here's the problem. A structural engineer sent a letter on January 11th saying everybody vacate because of structural issues. It wasn't stamped by the city until July 7th of that year, right? So it was like this. So somebody dropped the ball. And the property manager was also alleged to have received a copy of the letter. Guess what? Property manager, your building official for the city, Stewart, or Miami, and your engineer are all licensed by DBPR.
So here, so right now, I'm trying to get through the slide. I know what you know, but I don't think you're. That these ones have that jurisdiction and the training now for you to be able to go to them and say, this is what we're told, we don't think this is right, can you look into it?
So no offense, but I did call them a month and a half ago and complained about this. And they said, well, we have no one to really look at it right now, but here's some specifics. And call right back.
Right, yeah, well, like I said, July 1.
That was a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
didn't get that.
okay, so these are real life numbers, these aren't fake numbers. So we, with our insurance company, for a 9-condo building over at Harborage, they came back with a metal roof replacement cost of $693. This is, they already had our estimate of $304 that we replaced the roofs last year. They came back with $693 and a life of 20 years. The engineering company agreed that it's a 40-year metal roof, but they put 20 years on the SIRS study because they said the insurance company's going to come back and somebody can replace the roof for 40 years. So why is it not an engineering estimate of 40 years? And now you're referring to insurance.
And that is the other part, yeah, that is an issue.
But if you look at the difference in price, we got it replaced for $304, we gave that to them. They put an estimate of $693. Yes. 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 They said that based on our fact.
Did you, in your roof reserves now, have been reserved, how much roof, just ballpark, you say you already had been reserving your roofs now?
So we were reserved for the roof, and then COVID hit, and then prices skyrocketed. So we took a loan out to pay for it, because it was much more than our original reserve study that we did in 2022. So it came in significantly higher than 2022 reserve.
How much do you think a roof cost in the year 2000?
Well, it would see a 3% escalation in it, 3% over 304. I don't know, it's 400 or something thousand. But, so the next one is concrete restoration. Again, this is a walk around. This is not a milestone inspection. This is walking around saying, okay, your concrete's almost 20 years old. You're an 18-year-old condo. Concrete in our company only lasts 20 years. So we think your 9 units can put $150,000 in it, and in 2 years, repair the concrete. I said, what repair? They said, well, we didn't have any physical damage or anything, but we think that's what's going to cost in a couple of years. So what do you say to that? There's no evidence that it needs repair. They're asking 9 people to put $150,000 in.
Like, let me ask you, you had estimates that range from $276 change per unit to $1,107. The examples that were being given about roofs at 304 in 2023 and 693 in 2042, is it one of the companies that are at the higher end? Which company was
The lower.
at the lower?
And they're pretty widespread in the state of Florida and in other states, as an example.
You use Google search for straight all these kind of.
Cool. So here's the other one, painting. In 2019, we got the building painted for $27,000. They put exterior painting estimate down to $105. So how do you argue that? And they said the building should be painted every 7 years, not every 12 years like the agency warranties of the paint. So how do you argue that? Who do you go to if you don't agree? Waterproofing is the biggest example on this list. Waterproofing they defined as the hallways outside that open the elements. On this particular building of 9 units, there's 1,200 square feet of hall outside the condos. They said there's $183,000 every 7 years you have to budget for. So if I look my, what's that?
Yes, but it's not,
But it wasn't a balcony, it was a balcony. It's not from that. They did not put balconies in it. So what they originally came, and the reason I want to get educated on this, here's how to approve the budget to do a SIRS study, because it was coming down the road. No one knew what it really was. That we're gonna fund $5,000 to do a SIRS study for a non-unit building. And then all of a sudden the results came in. The initial result, the engineering company said, and over at Harborage, there's 2 and 3 bedroom condos that sell for anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000. They said each unit, based on our SIRS numbers, is going to have to put an additional $3,000 a month in the mandatory SIRS. A month. And we said, there's no way that's going to happen. So that's what got me involved with this. That was what got me upset about this. It's not even trying.
Annual standard maintenance, $3,000. Annual standard maintenance, right?
That's maintenance for waterproofing exterior paint and ceilings.
Okay.
That's not included in the SIRS numbers.
Who said you have to put away $3,000 a month per unit?
The engineering report that we got at the bottom says we recommend each condominium put $3,000 a month away for SIRS.
As an association or per unit?
Per unit. And that's what blew me up, and that's like, I can get educated on this, I got involved. So, this is why we got upset, so, to get back to the definition. Whoa. Let me just fix up, this is my last slide here. Some other issues are, in the bill, we put in there that if we have a study done in the last 5 years, you're allowed to use those study numbers for the SIRS. They refuse to use them because they say those aren't our numbers. We can't trust them between our name and our stamp plans. So they won't use the numbers.
But you don't even, and I'm asking this question, but you don't even need to go to them to approve that. You could just literally not even call them and say, it's been 4 years, we have one that's stamped, and that's, you're done.
We said that, I said we won't change our numbers. The engineering company.
There is no day. You've got it done within 5-year window. There is no day. You're done. You've satisfied the requirement law. You're done.
Okay, so he pushes it 1 year. That doesn't help.
So,
I'm just saying, on that issue, yes.
okay, so we just submit our numbers instead of their numbers. That's true.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, the next one is 10 years.
And that, the flight fund was 3 years.
Yeah.
The question was, the question for children was, that you said stamped, like they have to be stamped by someone. So the structural integrity reserve study, not just your normal reserve study that you can do every year, but the structural one where there's a visual component to it. That has to be done by a licensed engineer, architect, or reserve study professional. And they are the ones that's under their seal, their stamp. But if you have such a thing that's within 5 years, you can use that, but it's just the 10-year clock is going to start on when the date of that one, when that was done. So let's say it's 4 years old, if you turn that one in, then you're good for 6 to 4 years.
So this is,
Just make your budget.
this is my last chart, and this is my last item, is engineering firms admitted there's a 40-year roof over there, but they won't approve a 40-year roof, they put 20 years because of the insurance companies. Who are we responding to? The engineering company or the insurance companies? So again, what do we do if we don't agree with these engineering numbers? We could go to another engineering firm. You don't know, we're going to charge every condo another $1,000, another study, you don't know what the result is going to be. So, and it's all visual. There's nothing
Insurance companies
that
aren't.
they found. So, Anyway, I bring these items up because these are actual real examples from our condominium. We don't have answers for all these things, but maybe you guys can figure out better answers.
Insurance companies are just pulling the last permit and doing that. They're not basing anything off of whether or not the roof actually has a problem, whether it's leaking, whether there's a structural issue. They're forcing the communities to replace it.
Right.
Who's doing the appraisal that's required by statute every couple of years on Harborage?
I'll answer that before. I don't want to put your name.
No, but you guys are ordering an appraisal every couple of years to the statute.
When you're talking about these, the normal reserves that we do.
So every 36 months, you have to do an appraisal for your insurance company.
Company certified, CI.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, and then is your insurance company accepting that appraisal that you're giving to them, or they're doing it wrong?
I'll get word. So, let's not ask any more questions right now, because I'm gonna hand it up to Troy. Troy has a whole number of questions that have already been submitted. And just FYI, anybody who wants a copy of this, meeting tonight, the recording of it, and the documentation that we have, talk to your management company, and you'll be able to get it from them, which will supply you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. First of all, I just want to thank the senators again, and, Senator Pizzo, Senator Bradley, Travel Law, to be here. So I'm very grateful to Senator Harrell. Thank you so much for bringing them down here, because we're getting a lot of questions. I actually had some questions I had to answer already. We've got a series of 10 questions that were submitted. We're going to try and keep these questions being submitted through different condo associations. We're going to try to keep it down to about 4 or 5 minutes a question, so we can get through the evening. So, these senators have traveled a long ways. We want to get them home safe and sound tonight. And so let's get started. The first question is, there are certain structural issues such as rebar, roofs, and painting, which are understandably reasonable. Most other items, including reserving for anything over $10,000, is creating confusion by including elements that are not structural. Given the amount of confusion around what constitutes a structural element, would it make sense to have more clear definitions to guide the residents and engineers who are required for these studies, in which in what is and is not structural, or by limiting what must be included in the reserve study, as well as allowing residents to vote to opt out of anything other than what is defined as structural. And I'll let you guys decide who wants to answer the question.
So in section, the section of the bill, I'm happy to forward to you, and I know Senator Carl's also provided as well. If you look underneath those component itemization, not enumerated schedule, any other item that has a deferred maintenance expense or replacement cost, and Senator Bradley mentioned this earlier, that exceeds $10,000, and the failure to replace or maintain such item negatively affects the items listed in subparagraph A through G. So it's just referencing, it's not that there's some other $10,000 more items that are not listed and not enumerated, not specified. It's all the ones that are right above. It's literally saying $10,000 or more of all of these above that section there is.
Okay.
And I don't disagree with Mike. My father used to say, before I lost him, he used to say, put examples in contracts that a fifth grader would understand. When you get in front of the man, the woman in the black robe, you want to be very sure that you know what we're talking about. So I don't disagree with that. There are a number of things we do with criminal statutes, to your point. If I'm going to name something or call it something, I'm going to have a reference to another subsection of another statute to define it. So I was on the phone with USA Today, because there's a new law that went into effect a few days ago, and we use the term rape, but the word rape is nowhere in a statute. It's sexual battery. So there needs to be a reference to 794. And then to your point, the definition should be 627. You're absolutely right.
All right. We'll move on to the next question then. Question number 2, as Mike mentioned, many of the items outlined are not congruent to local building codes. In addition, the scope of the reserve study limits that the new legislation requires goes way beyond the justification that is for the physical protection and security of the residents. So who enforces this? If it is not the local building officials and the requirements exceed the codes, is it the intention in the law for it to be in conflict with the local building code? And would it be possible to align with the requirements of building codes?
I can speak on behalf of the entire legislature, the upper chamber, the Senate, that we are not looking to either disrupt or exceed that which is required. So these strict requirements set in place in the municipalities of Florida and the counties will be the floor. Some cities want to go nuts. You've all visited and were lived in places that had incredibly strict architectural, cosmetic codes and design criteria, and places that have had less than strict. But we're not looking to have an outlier, non-applicable set of requirements that don't align with the code. Some places, the code needs to be adjusted as well. Go ahead.
And for the milestone inspection that gets done when your 3 stories or higher and 30 years old, we took great care to make sure that that didn't exceed the scope that we were looking for. That is an opportunity for an architect, engineer to come through and make sure that the structure is safe. That was our singular concern. Is that structure safe? In fact, the bill reads, this is not a doctrine for code violation. It's spelled out in the statute. This is not an opportunity during a milestone inspection to say, you know, this ramp is 1 foot too short. And it is focused solely on structural issues. So yes, we have a building code, but for the milestone inspection, so focus solely on is the building safe. And then for the SIRS, that was what the Florida Building Commission signed off on in consultation with them and concurred with the Senator Discipline.
Thank you. The next question, and I think part of this one may have already been answered. Boards are being bound to what engineering firms are reporting, and they say they are required to submit these to the state. But as Mike pointed out, the numbers are widely inflated with no real standards. This legislation appears to be overly broad and has contributed to an environment where engineers and contractors are essentially free to write their own checks with associations having little or no recourse. In keeping with the issue of enforcement, what are the consequences if a board member refuses to serve due to liability risk and residents refuse to pay into the reserve? What department or who manage this, if boards disagree with the numbers presented, and how do they appeal these numbers?
Sure. So there isn't a requirement to give it to the state. You just have to tell the state that you did it. What you're required to give it to are the residents, prospective buyers, and the local building department. Because the local building department is the one that has the authority to, red tag building and come in and say this isn't safe. You have 2 hours to get out, kind of thing. But the state only is going to get it if you have a dispute like we were talking about, where you're saying these numbers are right and we're fighting, and then that's when they would have the numbers to look at. Otherwise, it's just you did it. I think the enforcement is not going to come from the state or from government at all. I think the enforcement on this is going to come from mortgage lenders and insurance companies. What's going to happen is even if you didn't do it, and there was nothing done, and deadline comes, and there's no report, when somebody in Harborage decides to sell their unit, and they're going to get a mortgage, the mortgage company is going to ask, where I need your structural integrity reserve study, because I want to see, here's what the experts say you should be reserving, are you really maintaining this building? And that's where, if you don't have one, then the sale falls through, then I think that's when those board members could be personally liable, where somebody can say, look, I was going to sell my unit, you guys didn't do the structural integrity reserve that you were supposed to do. And then the insurance company right now are asking for, the milestone inspections, reserve studies, maintenance schedule, all kinds of things. And if you don't provide that, that's where I think the enforcement is going to come from, not somebody from DPR knocking on the door saying, where is it?
And there's obviously a shift, but, and I've said it before, these changes were coming whether the legislature passed the bill or not. The insurance market, the banking, lending, underwriting, you're not going to be able to buy, an association isn't going to be able to borrow money without the underwriting, making sure that all the inspections are done. You're not going to be able to get insurance if your building isn't, they're going to have to send out the engineer, have them check every inch of it, worker. And so the change is coming regardless. What the legislature did is streamline it. Now we have the milestone inspections, we have the reserve studies, people are going to be on the right track.
The short answer to your question is you can't, but for the fact that the criteria and the rates have to be approved by the state of Florida. Insofar as you trust that process, I don't either. However, you'll notice perhaps conspicuously that all three iterations of these bills have not included rental apartment buildings. Can anyone think of a reason why? The building looks exactly just like another high-rise condo. Why isn't an apartment building included in this law? We have one owner in an apartment building who's incentivized both by their mortgage and their insurance company and the marketability of that building to keep it and maintain it. My family owns over 7,000 apartment units in the Northeast. And everyone in the family works their ass off to make sure that that place is spick, span clean, well-maintained, and the inspections that we have to go through to satisfy the lenders on these huge projects are incredibly, incredibly intense and make this look like nothing. Guess what? That's our investment. You're Gail's constituents. And every one of the members of our legislation, I cannot underscore this enough, came to visit and see what happens when things just get passed over. 5 years ago, when I filed this bill for transparency, to produce records, to lower the number of units from 150 to 25, just so you guys can see records and watch what's going on, was summarily rejected by my colleagues. SIRS was only 136 units, and records would have been transparently provided to all the residents 4 years before the collapse.
Okay. Wasn't there a second half to that question about where do we go if we don't?
It's going to be, we don't all agree on everything up here.
No, I know, but the point was, if the
It's going to go to years.
telling you the money is X, where do you go to argue with it?
It's going to go, and I don't want to discredit the state government and its 26 agencies, but it's going to go to the same agency that Mike called a month and a half ago and got no answer from.
But we will have more people.
65.
Right, 65 people and more money in this.
When, that was part of the bill that passed this year, was for the last 2 years as we've done these town halls, people have just been exasperated and having to hire private lawyers and being able to self-remedy problems with boards, problems that they're having with finances. And so, but DVPR jurisdiction was so limited, 95% of their complaints get dismissed for no jurisdiction. And so we came in this year and we greatly expanded their jurisdiction to include these issues. And then did a recurring appropriation to DVPR and allowed them to hire, what, 65 employees to be able to handle it. So when the bill is signed, which it isn't signed yet, there will be more folks, more investigators dialed in that will be more helpful.
A question about that. Senator, you mentioned that you're dropping it from 150 down to 25. Is that the transparency and disclosure issue, or is that the size of the condominium structure?
It's for the website. It used to be that website with 150 units. They put their official records online.
Okay.
But there's a lot of condos with less than 150 units, and a lot of the dispute that you hear, and a lot of the concern is the fact that residents can't get the documents that they need, and there's a lot of litigation, a lot of arguments about documents, getting the official
I
records.
just want to give you a real example. The way that was status quo for the legislature for a generation was that your association would not be required to put online the records of where you live. And I thought that was ridiculous. Everything else in your life, you can get online. So with the username and password, I thought you should be able to see where money's being spent, where checks are being cut, where things are going. And I got a lot of pushback until 90. How do you guys get them down? How do you get your records down? Online.
Okay, moving on to question number 4. This is from Len Amato at Island News. Most everyone here agrees that this law is well intentioned. Building boards want their buildings to be safe. Obviously, there was one that did. But the question is, having enough time to understand what we should do in the reserve studies and having enough time to fully fund the reserves, especially when the factors and the runaway cost of insurance and the cost of replacing roofs before necessary, even to get insurance, the cost of engineering studies to comply, as well as inflation. There's been some challenges in even finding the qualified engineers, architects, to do the milestone inspections, and they are concerned about opening themselves to possible future liability and consequences, as evidenced by the refusal to accept grants and conducting reserve studies. Time is the one thing that is needed to make sure this legislation accomplishes all of the good intention.
Would you be willing to consider extending the time period? There's an old Henry Luckman joke that said the doctor gave a guy 6 months to live and he couldn't afford to pay the bill, so he gave him another 6 months to live. We moved it back once. And I want to be clear about something. The majority of buildings in my district didn't wait for the government to tell them how to run a building and what was best practice. If a building's roof only had 10 years left, they were budgeting for the next 10 years. But a lot of buildings and a lot of communities were not. They had their own little window. Now you couple and align that with the parallel of their elected officials usually have a 4 to 8 year window themselves, and nobody's really paying attention. So here's the bottom line. What were you going to do if we didn't pass the law? If you have 3 years left on your roof and you waived reserves for the last 8, 16, 17 years, what were you going to do in 3 years? Let it go. Assume a discount. Travis and I calculated that if each association charged just on average, over 27,488 associations, just $13 more a month, most people would have adequate reserves for all these issues. But if you've been effectively static and running less than CPI increases over the last decade, we are where we are. Harborage actually has a very healthy association fee based on square footage. You guys have probably what, about $1, well over $1? That's very healthy. I have places in Miami that are running 50 cents a square foot. You cannot keep a building up and well maintained in that position. So we do have another bill that has to go out specific to this question. One other bill that I proposed was for you guys to be able to get an actual return on the money that's away in reserves. That was also, I got screamed at. I think you guys should be able to conservatively invest in reserves. You can get 5.5% on a 6-month CD rate, right? And everyone in Tallahassee will be enough. Would you guys be in favor of being able to get some return on? Okay, good, thank you. Gail. Tell Gail to vote for my bill.
We need to call your representatives. You send out your representatives. The Senate was willing to do it. And I just want to be sure that everybody is on the same page with the timeline. We did extend the timeline in the bill last year, that reserve of when you had to reserve by 1 year. So when it's, we didn't take the timeline in that. We extended it last year. And so the timeline is you have to have your reserve study done by December 31st, 24. So at the end of this year, you need to have your reserve study done. On a budget that's adopted after January 1, 25, so next year, in 25, when you adopt your budget, and most associations will adopt them at the end of the year. So the budget you adopt in, say, November of 25, which is in effect your 26 budget, that's what's going to include the findings of the SIRS. The budget you adopt at the end of 24, you're still able to waive by a majority, by a higher threshold, not by a majority of form, but you'll need it by a majority of unit owners, so all owners. So you can still conceivably waive in 24 and use it as a glide path, if you will, maybe not waive everything. So in 24, your 24 budget, you're going to have your SIRS, you're going to put together your budget. You can look at that and determine how your association wants to glide path. And then in 25, that's when you're not able to waive.
And Mike, you work for election beginning in what year?
26.
2026. Now, that's good news for a lot of places that we visited.
Is that brand new?
I didn't read that, and anything that I read.
That's your-
It's more than that.
And that's why I wanted to make sure we were really clear on exactly what that timeline is.
And like you can use the one that you did 4 years ago. To put that together, it'll be, then it'll be 5 years old, so you'll be right ahead. But based on what.
And so some other mystics
If you leave here hearing nothing else, you don't actually start paying and chipping in for these things until the year 2026.
and you can pool. That has been a city issue going back and forth. All of the items on your, they have to reserve for, those 8 items on your SIRS, they may be pooled, but that, they have to be a separate pool unto themselves. And you don't have to use straight line accounting for them. That was a big issue for the, you can pool those, that's gonna save 30%. That's gonna be a big difference to be able, so that was another big concern.
You should hold your sword.
You may pool the SIRS, but only the, you can't mix them with anything else, not SIRS pool, SIRS pool.
Yeah, sure, good.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you said you wait for 2026, but in the case of Harborage, they've got some questionable judgment from the engineering provider that one of them they used, I guess. So now it's in writing that something needs to be done, and the legislation itself has a timeline. You know, being a board member, you want to grateful for board members that are stepping forward, but you want to minimize your liability, you want to make sure that things are safe. Now you're in a position where you don't have the luxury to wait until 2026. If something's remaining life or estimated life of a year, it comes to your head today.
Yeah.
So you really need to do something as quickly as reasonable based on, you know.
Right, well, the way condo budgets work, let's say you guys are all board members and you're all unit owners. The board members, this is how it's always been. The board has to do what you would call a fully funded budget that includes those reserves that you say that you know about, that you were given. You have to put that together. There is no, you don't get to make any decision on it. But then you give it to the unit owners. The unit owners, and only the unit owners, also have some power, and they're able to either just accept that, or they can waive the whole thing, or they can partially fund what you've given. So what we're saying is in 2025, as you're putting together your 2026 budget, you're now going to have this reserve study, notwithstanding it's the 4-year-old one, so let's just call it, this one's the new one. The board absolutely, you have to put together a budget that shows what you have. Even if you can still argue with DPR about that, and you can still say, you get another opinion. I happen to think, having had a chance to just look at something, I don't think yours is right, Harvard, that's another issue. But you have to go, you go with that. But then when you get into your board members still in 2024 still have the ability, the owners can still say, nah, we're gonna either fully fund it, partially fund it, or wait it. And as Senator Brown said, I would not recommend, if you know it's coming, I wouldn't recommend completely doing nothing. I would partially fund it.
Now, and you bring up a really good point, it's something that we could probably tweak, but I don't even know if we should wait this long. But go ahead and you get your SIRS study done. And you guys are gonna sit there and go, some of this is just absolutely crap. More to the point, this is impossible to sell to our residents with a straight face and say this is objectively something we should be collecting for. The most important part of the bill, honestly, for you to be compliant, is to just get the study done.
Right.
Since the collection doesn't begin until 2026, you have ample time to get an appeal on particular items or issues that are inside of that study. You follow what I'm saying?
I think you exposed the word to a lot of liability. Something in writing from a certified engineer that said you need to do it. I may disagree with it. Could be $1 million charge, and it could be an association's done a great job in reserving it. But now you've got $1 million charge that wasn't adequate reserve for because it was nowhere anticipated. And the examples of roofing are a great example where the price has gone up dramatically. It just seems as though I was going to $1 million. No offense, don't even be so defensive. All right, I know, we're just here, I know you're doing a great job, I know you guys are here, it's fantastic. But just please, take a minute to listen and attempt to turn the room. You don't have to be so defensive, it's okay. But you're just too quick to jump on anybody that has a question. And me, it's just
not helpful. So I'm very grateful for everything you do, don't get me wrong, but it's a legitimate concern. And I've seen engineering reports that are questionable. So I hear you can actually wait until 2026, but if I'm in a position whose name is on the line, you know, I'm probably going to try to negotiate as much as I can, but ultimately, somebody's saying he needs to do something, and it's not actually reserved for. I mean, it's going to have a huge impact on the real estate values, and it's already happening. We're on the market. It's make it difficult to call and talk. So, to any extent possible, for some of this to be delayed until it's very clarification, that would be ideal. It doesn't seem like you want to do it. So, just as much as you can, I would listen to people that are in the middle of it. That's all I can.
Sure. So, hold on a second. I am one of them. I pay $100,000 a year in association dues with two condos. And one of them is their special assessment. I am one of them. And I would never ask anybody to put us in this position to do something that I wouldn't do. So I'm not being defensive about it. If you guys want to giggle about it, it's fine.
Well,
But
you realize how many questions?
sir, I'm just respectfully just going to say this. Had everybody done their job, there'd be no concern.
But we are doing our job.
Okay.
And what we're being told is that we have to put a lot more money away than is reasonable. Like
So
you
it's just
say.
Troy, okay. This is a really important point. I'll say it the third time. You don't collect until 2026. All you guys are going to be doing over the next few months is paperwork, a proposal of what should be collected. And we got $8 million and 65 new employees. You send them that report, you say, do we really need to collect for all of these things? And between the end of 24 through 25, you should be able to get a response. And you will get what Garrett Harold and Tallahassee. It's to say 36% of this can be cut off. This is not necessary. You're not responsible for this. You don't have to collect for this. But your responsibility, your obligation, beyond the fiduciary obligation where it was before generally, is just to get the paperwork done. That's it.
I'm sorry, but as a board member, I can, as president of my board, I can't take that chance.
To you, and I'm president of my association as well, so I understand. I keep going back to having had conversations about this association, I don't know if that's yours, but I'm not sure that you should rely that that's absolute gospel, what you were given, because I've seen it and seen others, and that particular company may have done, and they've gone back after we've talked to them, and they've said, oh, yeah, we were wrong. So just like I do my association with landscaping, I don't just say, that's it, that's what it's gonna be. I'm like, I don't think that's what it's gonna, I don't like that, and I look at getting other. I would just.
And I want to add one more point, because I understand that you have this reserve study that has these numbers that seem wildly inflated. And I respect your opinion, so I'm going to, yes, they are taking their fees off, their heating numbers are off. Now you have to deal as a board with what to do with this debt, right? I get that. What I want to say is about this fiduciary duty and the personal liability. Because I have looked at and I have done research on that, I have talked to staff, talked to council. If you are not behaving recklessly with self-enrichment, if you are trying to navigate the problem and bringing in a roofer to bringing in a roofer, looking at the numbers, if you are trying to satisfy the requirements of the law, you are not breaching your fiduciary duties. I think some associations were wildly, were out of proportion worried that somehow they were all open to personal liability. That is not the case. If you are working in good faith, trying to comply with the reserve study on a brand law, I have talked to lawyers, I've talked to staff, I've looked at case law about when people were acting, what does it have to rise to for someone to actually get sued and win on a breach of fiduciary duty in these situations. And I can assure you that nothing that anyone here has described comes remotely close to what is required for a lay board member that people recognize are not experts. I would just caution question before we run away with the idea that all the board members are going to be sued. If you are not recklessly self-enriching yourself and you are trying to comply and work with your board and work, you are not going to be personally liable. The House asked for that language to be perfectly clear, and I think just that the method to be debated about it. The language may be uncomfortable. It does not change the fiduciary duty that currently exists. They just wanted it spelled out. I wish it wasn't there. And that's where we are. It does not change the fiduciary duty that we currently have. So I just some comfort on that, but I understand that it's
Ladies and gentlemen, we're actually going to conclude the question and answer portion of the event tonight. But first, I'm going to ask, will you all stick around for a few minutes? If people have a question, okay, let's take one more question from the audience.
I'm happy to take whatever question you guys want.
I'm a real estate broker, real estate professional that works in the Harborage development. And you're talking about fiduciary duty. I think one of the issues that we have is we have these kind of studies and reports that have these numbers that people are looking at it face value. You as an expert looking with this doesn't make sense. But you're telling me that there's a potential $3,000 increase in black and white on there. Now it's my fiduciary duty to disclose that to my potential buyer that's coming into that building. That this is not now important.
I don't disagree with you. The first thing I want when I leave here is that document that's at $3,000 a month. We love case studies, and here's a commitment we're going to make to everybody at Harvard, okay? John, here's a commitment we're going to make. I live 2.5 hours from here, Jen lives 4 hours. We're going to use Harvard as a case study, and we're going to closely monitor and watch.
I'm going to clear apples.
And we're going to walk through each, we're going to use you guys as a case study. We're going to say what is necessary, what is not necessary, what is gouging.
Yes, thank you. If I have any questions, but I just have a couple statements. And based upon, well, being that being part of the solution or part of the problem. So as I'm sitting here tonight, I actually want to work in a condo. I'm the Rural Veterans in Iowa. And I can very much convey with a lot of people that we are going to the whole thing as well. And just to give you an example, our monthly fees, two-thirds of that, we cannot, because of the reserve study, right, because of the SIRS and the state personality staff. But then the other part of it is because of insurance, right? The other part you can control are basic operational stuff, basic practices and all this kind of due diligence on. So, you know, I want people to know that in going through this, and thank you, senators, for coming here, because I think the temperature of the room, maybe some things to talk away with would be some of these things. SIRS specialist certification with formal documents trained by the state, because the reports are currently very subjective. We have plans for more consistent compliant reports. Just like realtors, right? If you're a National Association of Realtors and you are licensed through the professional regulations, you pretty much follow a certain lease, you follow a certain contract. Yes, so maybe perhaps a more objective template for these particular engineers to follow, and that they have to take courses.
I agree. So, where I live, we actually have some incredible structural engineering firms that have circulated amongst their own association. They're doing a template to be used, so we're all on the same page. In case companies should go under, the principal should die, so they can pick up where they left off. It's not high realistic.
Because I, in other states, I don't think there's any discrepancy that this is a good thing moving forward. I think that people need help in some guidance. So my next thing is, I think we need, especially in Stewart, Martin County, and for St. County, St. County, we need local advisory advocacy boards in the counties with certain percentage of condos that are high, with a presence of the professional rating ABPR presence. We don't need them in town capacity. We need presence here.
How many class ratings do they do?
Okay, so they can be here. Because sometimes, and as we have older aging population, And some of those older aging population folks
We agree.
cannot do the technology.
So we need to have a Spanish speaker, I mean, in parts of South Florida, they're supposed to, we can't even communicate, so the conversation will be down south too.
Correct. Okay. And because local boards, board of directors, have taken on such a legal commitment for this, and making sure that they're doing the right thing, that ultimately falls on every single person that owns a unit, including yourself, right? So can we try to get some local assistance for the board of directors and the camps to seek free legal state advice for SIRS and reserve compliance that also have legal presence? Another thing that I saw in my condo building which broke my heart, and continues to break my heart, and that as we push forward with this, we have saved our homes in Florida, we have financial assistance for electric bills. I have seen 80-plus-year-olds with oxygen tanks trying to move out of their place because they know that they can't keep up with this.
So we just passed a bill that's going to be signed, signing the law that extends the Harborage Safe Home Program also to condominiums.
Wonderful. That's
Number
really
two, you have banks that we can pull it from out of state that will actually now lend even when you exceed the threshold of 5% deductible on condos. Used to be 5 with Fannie and Freddie. The one that's actually now below the 10%. I also have a number of banks locally, and I'm selfish to my constituents, I'm sorry, but Gail invited me, so now you guys can enjoy the same benefit. I have banks that will lend on equity and not worry about what someone's income status is. Okay? Yeah. So I hear about, what about the 85-year-old widow who's on a fixed income? Overwhelming majority of my 85-year-old widows on a fixed income are good cooks, but have 100% equity in their unit. And if it's basically effectively not a mortgage, but a lien that'll only be performed and transacted once there's a transaction on the unit later upon death or sale, it's okay. We do this with septic tank conversion. We do it with condominiums.
Okay, that's it. One more.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, how about, is the line of credit count toward funding your reserves?
I absolutely believe it should.
Well, it does.
I absolutely believe it should. And again, as Senator Bradley said, I can get the Senate on board. It's taken me 4 years. When I first proposed the investment question, you get the other account anyway. You get a certified financial advisor that takes the reserves and puts it in the account. It's very safe. And I think a line of credit would be the same. I have some units in my district that are so crazy expensive. I want you to continue this. That these units that are $40, $50 million, like, I don't want to give up $2 million of reserves I can't touch and get no return from. Just call me when you need it. Or they go, I got a line of credit. I can tap it whenever I want. I don't want to move this money out. I can use it on the street somewhere else. So I absolutely agree. But it scares me. Guys, most of the people that work in Tallahassee have never signed in front of a paycheck or made a payroll. That's true. They think of things in a vacuum, not consider of this situation. So I agree with you, yes, it should, we need to get more sophisticated.
In fact, the original version of the bill had 2 provisions that the House would not accept. The first was investment of reserves. So we're looking for ways to have some sort of glide path. One was to allow you to invest your reserves consistent with how we invest our state employee pensions, our teachers, and certainly we can do it in the same manner. That was absolutely rejected. The House Commission, they would not do that. The second provision that was in the original draft of my bill was to allow associations to use a line of credit to satisfy the delta that they may have from their cash on hand to meet that threshold. And we brought numbers, we sat down, the House absolutely would not do that. And so that is not in the bill, and so to answer your question, no, you may not look at an available line of credit, and that will not satisfy as a fully funded reserve.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. I want to say to all of you, your input is key. Can you see us taking notes up here? You will be getting a bill next year. I was promised you, you will be getting next year. Your input is absolutely critical. And I want to thank you for coming out, spending your time here, and especially want to thank Senator Bradley and Senator Pizzo and Travis Wood